But yeah, I guess with that in mind, thanks everybody for tuning in to the final day of programming here at Dallas Startup Week. My name is Justin Varghese. I am the gaming and esports track captain. And also for this session, I guess I'm the moderator too. So here we go. I already kind of talked with our panelists beforehand, but especially since we all kind of know each other pretty well, and also, let's face it, it's the first panel of the morning, that gives us a ton of flexibility and liberty to do kind of whatever we want to. So think of this a little bit less like a panel, more like an open, honest dialogue and conversation. But that being said, if you do have any questions that you would like for us to answer, we will still have a couple minutes saved at the end for audience Q&A. Why don't we go ahead and start and do some brief intros, starting with you, Trey, since you were the first person on.
How's it going?
Can you talk a little bit about your background, how you got started, all that?
So in esports in general, started maybe 7-8 years ago. Didn't own Tourney Locator right at first. Owned a video game store called FX Game Exchange, which is in Plano, Texas. Ends up being basically the center piece of DFW, or the home venue, if you want to call it that, for Smash Brothers, all things Smash Brothers, pretty much. Bought into the company, maybe 3 years ago now. So it's owned by myself and my business partner, Rob Dixon. But yeah, been going strong ever since. Loved it from the very beginning, even when I didn't own it. Was really invested into making my space a home for Tourney Locator by just changing the entire space, rebuilding it, adding setups to the environment so you didn't have to plug in your giant TV, your CRT for Melee, and eventually, it's just turned into something I dearly miss right now for sure. And then it's turned into large scale events and regionals and different things like that. But it's mostly about community and family for me. That's how I kind of started in it.
Yeah. And I am happy to say that I'm a product of that environment that you cultivated for sure. My start in esports was as a play-by-play commentator, and it was back in version maybe 1.5 of the shop, I think.
Yeah.
And it was cool that the shop, like FX grew, and I kind of grew alongside that too in regards to my trajectory in this space. So I feel like I say it every time I see you, but I couldn't be where I was without you. So thank you, Trey, for all that you do.
I appreciate that.
Thanks for creating such a welcoming, warm atmosphere for so many people. Danny, tell the folks that are viewing right now for the first time a little bit about who you are and what you're doing. I know that you recently had a little bit of a pivot, so diving into some of the insights behind that would be fantastic as well.
Perfect. Yeah. So I've always been trying to find my way in the esports industry. I knew tournament organizing was something that's a precipice for esports because it can tap into all the different subsets of esports, meaning the management portion, the marketing portion, the technology, the production, and the competition elements. And I started by hosting tournaments and then on campus, and then focused in on the software development element by spending a couple of years in San Francisco, learning technology, learning startups, and really wanted to come back to Dallas, where my home is in South Dallas, to be able to cultivate a community here. I really wanted to find out the community that I wanted to cultivate, because esports, as everybody knows, is pretty dynamic. And I knew sports games was just something that I loved. I played while being an athlete in college as well. I knew that the sports games was a little bit behind all the different other genres in esports. And I really wanted to just stick my foot in that, and then just really just say, hey, this is the community I want to help grow. And hopefully I can multiply that or create that rubric and apply it to different other genres as well. So I went to, I built out a 2,000 square foot space, which was my home, to allow individuals to come in and host tournaments, while identifying if the platform that I created was essentially a tournament hosting platform at that time, and see if it was viable for the industry, and hoping to connect or compete that with, large entities like Smash EG and Battlefy and all of those. So I quickly recognized you have to have a lot of power behind you to do that. So I really started to pivot towards the sports scene, and And I started to see really the viability of competitors in that NBA 2K space. And I just really wanted to be able to create that community for individuals who were hoping or aspiring to be a pro in NBA 2K and other sports games. And so ultimately, I recognized that the space became a little bit too little for us. I looked and sought to build out a larger facility. So right now, I own a 15,000 square foot esports arena in the southern sector of Dallas. And we make sure that we focus in on educating. When I first seen the building, it used to be a school, ITT Technical Institute. So my vision of always going the education route was far ahead. And I knew that I really wanted to turn the entity into an esports school. And so when COVID happened, it really forced a lot of us to be more virtual. So having a software background, I knew that all of the actual elements of putting education together in an experiential form inside of the building by letting students come in and touch all of those 5 key components of esports, that all had to be turned virtual. And so I really started being able to create content that's geared towards that, while at the same time developing a tech platform and putting all that content on the tech platform, like similar to like Canva, Canvas, or any other LMS that's out there. And that's really what we've been focusing on, is providing our LMS out there to institutions. At this point, now it's turned from nationally to globally now. So that's one of the biggest focus on the full rebrand, so it can adhere better to the institution, so they can really feel as if education is a prime element inside of esports.
Whenever I was putting together the folks to be on this panel, I thought it was kind of interesting that you have somebody like Trey, who, I consider the godfather of all things grassroots here in DFW. And that's really where he's played. Danny, you're kind of an interesting hybrid model where you have this dedicated venue, you have relationships with the publishers and developers as well, but you are still catering to a much more grassroots-centric community. And then you have somebody like Jonathan, who is very much a product of that grassroots space, but is incredibly gifted, I think, and in a really unique position here as the CEO of Esports Stadium Arlington. So, Jonathan, why don't you jump in and just say a little bit about your humble beginnings, where you are now, and what the game plan is?
Thanks, Justin. Yeah, so my name is Jonathan Oathone. I'm the president here at Esports Stadium Arlington. So my journey began about 11 years ago, actually, in a pretty interesting way. I actually started out as a competitor in a game called Street Fighter 4. And, so that's really where I dug my claws into the esports competitive scene. I mean, I've been a fan without knowing it of the esports space since 1999, really, with StarCraft vanilla releasing. So following that game, watching, Boxer, Yellow, and all of them competing, on my 56K internet, led me to wanting to, find some type of audience, some type of community when I discovered Street Fighter 4. And happenstance walking into a GameStop, buying a PS3 at the time, and just seeing Street Fighter 4 releasing that day, it spoke to me, really. I love to tell that story, and I could sit here for an hour talking about how I got involved into the scene and how it just was meant to be for me, right? But ultimately, I ended up, playing the game, becoming a competitor, traveling a lot. My first tournament was actually here in Dallas-Fort Worth at an event ran by the Uppercut Serpent team. They're no longer around anymore. They have families and stuff now, so they abandoned kind of running tournaments. But ultimately, got involved with competing. Saw the need to develop a community in Arkansas, where I'm from. Started working with local gamers. We would host meetups in our garages every Wednesday. That turned into me identifying that, hey, we need to run bigger events. We need to get more people involved with our community. So we started running more tournaments at actual venues. This was 10 years ago still. And then I saw the opportunity that, hey, we need to start broadcasting these tournaments. We need people from all over the world to be able to watch us so we can expand our scene, right? So we did that. And ultimately, that led me to really taking broadcasting seriously in esports, at which, I traveled all over the country, broadcasting tournaments in DFW, Houston, all the way down to Las Vegas, where I actually directed an EVO in 2015. That was the first big opportunity for me. And sometime around 2016, and a guy named Chris Cheney, and we shook hands, networked, built a relationship, and ultimately that led into me getting investment from my company, which is invested by the Texas Rangers group, the ownership group there, to start a company that would essentially develop a facility, which is now the largest dedicated esports facility in North America. Our goals with developing the facility were to essentially, take all the physical nuances in esports, from building an event from the ground up, all the experiences and knowledge that I had in doing so over the years. We wanted to alleviate those physical nuances and basically build a venue that was turnkey, something that could cater to all types of esports events. So, since we've been open late 2018, Q4 November, we've hosted, a prestigious Counter-Strike tournament such as ECS with our partners over at Faceit. We've done the Hearthstone Masters Tour circuit. We did the very first Overwatch League homestand, events at our facility. We've done educational events such as IGL. And we were poised for even more success later this year by hosting, the very first Apex major, the Gears major event. But unfortunately, COVID kind of paused us in our tracks. So now we're trying to pivot, right? Figure out what we can do to get to next year. And we've been able to leverage studio space to do that. So we've been working with our partners doing studio shows just about every weekend, just to keep the gears rolling for ourselves.
Awesome. We'll get to the COVID part of our chat in a minute, I'm sure. And even though it's 9 a.m. because we're in the event space, if you wanted to crack open a drink as we talk about that, I won't hold it against any of y'all. One thing that's very interesting about each of your stories is that it feels like there's a bit of a tipping point, right? You start off as somebody who maybe is either casually interested or is maybe watching from afar, but it feels like the consistent thread in all of your narratives is that there is a moment, a catalyst that makes it so that you go all in. And starting with Trey, and then open for everybody after that, like, what was that moment for you, Trey? What was the moment where you were kind of like, I guess I'll let these crazy kids play Smash in my store for a couple hours, and you decided to flip the switch and you saw, oh man, this actually has a ton of potential?
That's a good question. I haven't really thought about that. I guess early on, just seeing one of my employees kind of host some Street Fighter, different fighting events around the middle of my store that had 3 plasmas hooked to it at 10 feet high. So everybody's sitting in their chairs doing this. But I think it was really kind of when Billy, former owner of Tourney Locator, UTD Zach Elsick, now good friends of mine, they walked in and basically were looking for a space and to host Project M or Infinity and Beyond or whatever was going on back then, which is the title of a PM Weekly. And it just kind of grew from there. And then I think after just seeing how these kids would lug in 50-pound CRTs and a GameCube or a modded Wii or a backpack full of water and spend the $10 that they had to their name just to play an event with 50 other people sitting side by side, and all they did was have a good time. It just kind of, I think, struck a chord with me. And when I was able to bring Tourney Locator actually to FX and make it the home of it, I don't know, it was a weird time. You can ask some of my old employees too, but we were all on board. We basically tore the back half of our store up, and before they had even agreed to make FX their home, we tore up the back end of the store and built 20 tables and went out and bought CRTs or found CRTs on the street. I upgraded the internet to 5 up, which was like minimum for HD quality, and it was business rate, so it was expensive as hell. Now it's pretty cheap, but supplying
as long as you're not stuck with Smart City, it's usually
right. And then, like I said earlier, we supplied some of the consoles, and I don't know, Billy and I just kind of hit it off, and I I'd already was in love with the community, and that was it. I guess I just, like you said, I changed my gamer tag to Godfondren, as you call me the Godfather, but I don't know. I guess I kind of feel like that a little bit, kind of like the father, but I know I'm not. It's just because of my age.
No,
you can see.
It's definitely
maybe the glare's too much. Yeah.
Jonathan, what about you? What was obviously meeting Chris Chaney and the ownership group behind the Rangers was huge, but I mean, I knew when I first met you, maybe what was it, an absolute battle like 4 or 5 years ago, that there was a fire under your ass to do something big and especially impactful around the fighting game space. So what was that moment that got you to that point?
Yeah, I think I've always been kind of an innovator in the fighting game community, right? And there was a lot of change that I wanted to see, and I had several job offers to move out here to Dallas Fort Worth, throughout my 11 years of being in the space, and I took none of them. I've got 4 kids, in Arkansas, and and I had, that would mean me moving my life here to Dallas Fort Worth. So I had a comfortable living. I didn't mind the traveling. And there were moments in my career where I, almost, decided to hang it up and just focus on a more practical, non-esports kind of path for myself. Right. Luckily I didn't do that. But, the opportunity came up to really start my own company, with significant investments, and to get that off the ground and to really kind of spin the wheels on what my dreams and goals were with the esports space, right? So someone said, here's an opportunity, do you want to take it? And I said, I don't know. But really, I'd like to thank a good friend of mine, Markel Lee, for really pushing me over and explaining to me that, this was the opportunity that I've been waiting for and that I should take it. So, obviously the funding, the partnerships and things like that went a long way, but just the trust that I had in a good friend of mine to do that helped me really make that decision. So
good guy, Markel.
Yeah.
He's a great dude. Yeah. What about you, Danny? What was your all-in moment when it came to this this area?
Yeah, I feel as if like my all-in moment was in college, being an entrepreneurship major and trying to figure out what exactly my business would be, when it came up to the point to where someone needed their console fixed, and I was able to find the person who could fix them. It was an easy opportunity for me to go and shadow and find that person that I mentored. So I literally brung him consoles on consoles on consoles just to make some capital in college. Because I was a track runner. So you get partial scholarship and you got to figure out a way to make the capital yourself to pay for your school. So I was always looking at how do I pay for my school? And at that point, just being able to see, all right, I can fix somebody's console for $40 and it can take me about 30 minutes and literally making a business on that. It provided me to understand data on who plays what, how they play, what games they play, what accolades. So if I wanted to host a tournament on campus, it would be easy just to utilize that marketing data to go push out on campus and put on, threads. And this is about 2010. So at that point, hosting tournaments is not like, it wasn't big. Everybody don't know it. But I immediately seen that my teammates or people that I was friends with, they would ask me like, hey, you're hosting tournaments, you're making capital. They looked at it from a perspective, I need to make capital in college. So I knew it was just like a cheat code that was there that allowed me to go market out, but everybody didn't have it. So I was just more like, if I can go create a better way for other individuals to host tournaments to make capital like I am, then that's a good business model. So I immediately took that business model, started to prepare it as an entrepreneurship major. My teacher would be like, hey, you got a business on campus already. Just do this as your capstone. And so ultimately it was me drawing up, spaces and building out, utilizing like SketchUp to build out what a facility would look like and how it would have screens and bars and all of that in college at 2010. And ultimately, I knew that that's where I wanted to go. So all of this that's happening right now was already done in 2010. So I already knew that I wanted to do this a long time ago.
What I love about all of these stories, and I think part of the reason why you're all so successful in your own ways, is the fact that you all started off providing value for a small group of people initially, and then eventually scaling that up. I get these calls and these messages all the time from people that are saying, hey, I want to have my first esports event and I wanted to pull in 30,000 people. How do I do this?
Yeah.
And the first question I always ask is, well, have you put on an event that brought 3 people or 30 people? So a roundtable, starting with Danny, what was it that made it so that you were able to get to that initial 10 to 20 people that bought into what you were doing from a pure competitor standpoint? What were the best practices that you had and the things that you offered that allowed you to be a staple for a small community and eventually scale that up to something more significant?
Yeah, just really getting slapped in the face to know, like, all right, I have this skill set to build a tech platform, but in my mind, I'm trying to adhere to all the different genres and really being able to not adhere to any genres of esports and recognizing quickly, like, oh snap, you can build a tech platform, but you don't know the intricacies in these communities. So to really provide value to the individuals, so you got to really focus in on something. And at that point, it let me know, like, all right, cool, I can provide value to a small set. Even in my mind, I'm like, okay, I want to go, I know I've got the skill set. I want to go raise all of this capital to make it for the platform, but I don't know League of Legends. I don't know the communities of Dota where I can go say, hey, we have 1,000 individuals on here on this platform and they're using it. I just couldn't do that. And it would be inauthentic for me to go that route when it will be more like, okay, I do know this, I know sports. So let me just try to build that up. And ultimately that's hard because you got to spend all your own money. So, in the instance, I was able to build a community because the community members knew that everything was coming out of my pocket. It was, when they come in my home, if I can go turn a 2,000 square foot home into an esports facility where it's 2 decks and I'm living in the closet for 3 years, right? Where I put a bed in the closet. When the community comes see that, when they engage, they're more like, man, he's just like us, he's spending his money in here. He's doing all of this. So that's how you build a core community. So now in a 15,000, if I go do an NBA 2K event, like everybody comes out and they travel from all different areas. And now, like when I see, Dave Fry, who won the national championship for the NBA 2K League with a $1.6 million prize for it. And afterwards, he contacts me and says, wow, I remember starting in that home. And now there's 8 other pro athletes that are in NBA 2K that did that exact same thing. So that respect level of understanding that it was authentic and ultimately knowing that I was put in a position to where I had to build all of this, out of my own capital. And I'm still doing that to this day.
Right. Yeah, it's a phrase I've heard in a lot of panels for some other tracks at Dallas Startup Week, is servant leadership. And I feel like grassroots community leaders kind of take that to the next level in a lot of cases, right? Because you're absolutely right, Danny, to even get to that point. I mean, you have to spend so much, and you don't want to let on just how much you're spending to provide value to these communities, but they find out eventually. And I think the one thing that the gaming community definitely does have is a ton of loyalty to the folks that they have those strong relationships with, which I know Trey probably knows firsthand. It's probably the reason why you've consistently had the largest Smash Weekly in the South for years now. Any other thoughts on how you can, for people who are looking to build their first event, what's most important to do to get that initial, 10 to 20 people from Trey or Jonathan? Any other thoughts on that?
You want to go ahead, Jonathan?
Yeah, sure. I think Danny hit it right in the head. Authenticity is extremely important. Community leadership as well. One thing you have to understand really is like, what is your audience? With esports, there's so many different types of communities that you have to cater to. I mean, just in the FGC alone, you've got a very diverse group of people that you're trying to attract, right? That you're trying to service or please. And, whether that's the NRS scene, the Mortal Kombat, the Injustice guys, the anime scene, the Guilty Gear, the Blaze Blues, the Smash scene, the Melee, the Ultimate guys, or really, the other fighters such as Street Fighter and Tekken, right? Everybody has a very specific way that you have to cater to them, market to them, talk to them. For me, when I got my first 10 to 20 people through the door, I mean, I'll say my first event was a tournament in my garage in Conway, Arkansas, on a Wednesday night.
Right.
We had probably 30 people there. And, it was networking through old traditional ways, which doesn't help now, but forums and things like that, such as SRK, SureYouCan.com. But we connected with people through groups, Facebook groups. We found places where people were talking about things, with common interest. We kind of carried that flag, and it's super important to do that in the communities. There's different types of communities, and you have different approaches to doing that. But just for the sake of what I'm used to, you as a leader in that community have to carry that torch, because not many other people are going to do that. So you're going to have to be the one that's going to push it forward and do the work, network with everybody, and obviously create something that's a welcoming home for all niches and communities within whatever you're looking for.
I love the SRK bit. I know for some folks in the Smash scene, for Smash 64 in particular, since it's kind of the redheaded stepchild of the series, what they would do is they would go on Craigslist and say, hey, if you can beat me in this game, I will pay you $100. Meet me here at this venue to do it, right? And it worked. Like, that's how you got people who eventually became, solid community leaders today, is because of stupid Craigslist ads like that.
Yeah.
But that's kind of what you have to do when you're super grassroots. It does remind me, though, of something that Seth Godin mentioned about marketing, right? Where a lot of marketing and marketers try to aim for the biggest audience possible, when there is a lot of value if you can just kind of think to yourself, what's the smallest amount of people that I can dance with, that I can share my message with and have success with, is essentially, right? And I think that all of you have that idea really well capsulated in your mindsets, especially whenever it comes to building some of these more grassroots communities. Trey, any final thoughts to add on to that before we move on?
No, I think they both pretty much told everything. The only thing that I would add, and I know they meant all this as well, just worded a little differently, but I think as I don't think it matters if it's 2 people. I don't think it matters it's 150 people. I think if you project yourself as someone who, one, has an interest, even though I'm not a player at all, like I really am bad at any fighter game. And that started with Mortal Kombat on the arcade years and years and years and years ago. But I don't think it matters as long as you show that you're interested, and you genuinely are,
right?
And that you care, and that I have found the biggest thing that helps me, whether it's just inside of the organization with Tourney Locator, or just in any of the Smash scenes or fighting scenes, that it's listen. I tell my employees, whether it's the store or Tourney Locator, hey, I don't care if you have a bad idea. I am not the supreme leader. Yes, I'll make the final decision. And even if I think your idea is way crazy or off the wall, you know what? There might be a piece in there that you take and you use. Even though 95% of it is crazy, it'll never work. That 5% might work.
Yeah.
But it's the same thing in the communities. I think just listening to their issues, what they like, what they don't like, things like that. I think we can all attest to that. I think it's just the thing to do, and it's where these 2 guys have great success. And I mean, I admire both of them, even though I barely know Danny, but just seeing the positions that they're in, there's no way they could have gotten there without that one element of just listening to their communities.
Right. I am curious now, though, Trey. Do you have any examples of where somebody came to you with an idea that was 95% garbage, but you were able to take that 5% and weave it into something great?
Somewhere possibly around a production.
Maybe.
Well, that's easy. That's just Hunter wanting me to spend gods and gods and gods amounts of money. No, I can't think of a specific example. I just know my memory's not that great anymore, but I just feel, and I know that just hearing all of the voices put together, or a single voice, just kind of influences and shapes what you do. Man, I have sat down, good example of listening and not listening and doing the wrong thing. Last year, before Low Tier City, which we held at Jonathan's venue, which was
Amazing. Incredible.
Amazing. Yeah. I
Best
still,
produced Smash event, period.
yeah, right.
Like
Right.
it's not
It was
even
on
close.
TV. It was awesome.
Oh,
It's one of our best events for sure too.
yeah,
So
it's in every deck.
really
You
push the
both won.
limits.
So
But
we're
please.
having a little bit of an issue with Melee, in the fact that, when Ultimate came out with Melee, felt like it kind of dipped a little bit. Interest, Armada retired the year before. I don't know, lots of little different things. And there was last year's majors in Smash Brothers in general were crazy good, all of them. And so I just felt like, we need to do something. And people were discussing wobbling and this and that. And the number one player in Texas at the time was Bananas, Wobbler.
Yeah.
So the higher ups, which, I don't know, all the TOs in Texas, we all decided, hey, we're going to ban wobbling at our weeklies. So, okay, we did. I wasn't really a big fan of that, but I wanted to make a big splash at low tier cities. So we got closer, and 2-3 tournaments banned wobbling majors. And so I had just made a video called The Godfondren. But it was based, it was based off of The Godfather, and it was basically me and Bananas talking back and forth about wobbling and how my family and this and that and going on. It was all sarcastic, trying to make fun of the whole banning wobbling thing.
Right.
And we got to the point where I wanted to make a splash, and we hadn't finished editing it and whatever. And so we just kind of forgot about it. And the time to release it was probably wrong. Just was too long after development or production. And I was like, man, I need to make a splash. So we decided, Rob and I, that we were going to ban wobbling, jump on board and make it an announcement to kind of really kick off low tier city advertising and stuff like that. So I used that video to do that. And in the process, I think we're okay now, but in the process, I destroyed the relationship between myself and Bananas because I used it as a tool to, further my tournament. And I didn't even realize what I was doing, but basically I was showing the world that Bananas authorized no wobbling. And that's what he cared about. And so we really sat down and I had I listened to everything he said. And he was absolutely right. To this day, I feel horrible for it, but
Right.
I think he understands. And I think we both kind of came to a conclusion to where maybe we're not as good of friends or as we were, because I kind of feel still like a little knife in his back, but we definitely can talk and converse and do different things. But that was one of those times I really had to listen. And that's not probably the real example that you wanted, but I definitely know that I listened that day. I think, but just listening overall in general, just to the overall group and what people need or want is what's maybe I don't remember all the time, but I know that it does affect everything that we do.
Yeah.
For sure.
And
now I just brought everything down.
No, I think it's important.
I'm like, man, that's deep. That's real.
Yeah, it's so important. And we're guilty of it on social. We're guilty of it on panels too, where it's just a highlight reel, right? And I think it's really important for us to be able to be honest and talk about maybe some of the mistakes we've made. One thing that's notable in what you were talking about, and I'm sure it's conveyed not only to me as somebody who's witnessed it firsthand, but also to the audience that's listening, is you have a deep, intimate relationship with all of these players and all these members of your community. So now, as we get into the dreaded COVID section of our conversation, what's been the biggest impact on each of y'all's businesses and those personal relationships during this time of the pandemic?
Yeah, so I'll jump in there. For us, it's been really rough. Obviously, we opened in late 2018 with high aspirations and goals, and we had an amazing business plan. And in our first year, we're pretty much broke even. I mean, if you saw the balance sheet, you'd be like, that's crazy for a startup business and in its first year. And so we were going into 2021 or 2020. Wow, time flies. With a tremendous amount of just excitement and energy. And we had, our event calendar was looking insane. We spent the very first year of our business just building our community, building our calendar, building our connections and network, and identifying what our business models were. And then March, we saw it coming up in February, obviously watching things that were happening in China and working with some of our partnerships. We worked with Abe, Activision Blizzard, and we did 2 weeks worth of events with them, and just the entire time it was very tedious, and everybody was nervous, right? I think we started getting in conversations with our partners over at EA with the Apex major. Hey guys, we're really watching what's happening right now. So it started setting in for us, in February, and then March is when it really hit. COVID basically started shutting down the entire country. Us as an entertainment venue that relied on people being in the facility on a day-to-day basis, it completely shut us down. We immediately sent everybody home, closed our business, and didn't open for 5 months. Shut our doors right then and there.
Yeah.
Open 5 months later, but our calendar was wiped out, and so we had to identify ways to pivot. Right, we didn't want it to be a sob story, right, and we didn't want it to be a story where we had built such great success and then it all just kind of fell apart, right? So we pivoted, and we're not anywhere close to turning a profit right now. We're way down on our revenues, high on our expenses because of the cost that it takes to really deal with COVID in general. But for the most part, we've managed to keep most of our employees and provide jobs to them, allow them to maintain their benefits, and leveraging the spaces that we have, the technologies that we have to adapt and conform to this new, not even new, but this online only esports world. So we've leveraged our connections to build products, to white label products for our partners, and
Right.
that's really what we've been doing. We've got a business plan that's going to get us through next year, and we're going to stick by that. And for us, we're just waiting for that vaccine to come. We're waiting for it to be safe for our attendees and things like that before they can come back in. But we do have tools to stay afloat, and we're leveraging them.
Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, and I'll follow up with that. March for everybody globally was something tough, but I always kind of looked at it as and I always reference back to sports because that's where I grew up, spent so much time. My coaches back then, in regards to sports, specifically track, where it's outdoors. When you arrive to a track meet and that you got to run a 400, 800 mile, and you see that it's either really hot outside, it's raining, it's windy, the track elements are never like constant. It's never like what you will hope to be.
Yeah.
And when you look across and you have somebody who just won state, or you have someone who has posted the fastest time, and you're like, but then you think it's like we all are experiencing the same rain, we all experience the same water, we all experience the same wind and heat elements. And so in that instance, when that gun blows, you run your race and hope that you do not be sucked down, and understand that we're all in the same race, right? And
Right.
That I looked at that as an opportunity in regards to March and experiencing it. And the hardest part was just notifying the team about like, hey, we are not going to have events inside of the space because of the virus, and we want to make sure that we protect. So I definitely took a lot on myself to say, well, if we can just build a platform, we know education in esports is something critical. We know that schools may not at that time open up. So how can we impact those institutions that have to go virtual just as much? And that was one of the immediate things where I had to, say, hey, I know we're esports company. I know we're a company that want to do esports events. But we have to pivot. And I remember like getting the whole team together inside of our building and saying, you know, and presenting the story like when I was in San Francisco, and we created a product, raised capital from our CEOs, from VCs, and you know, Facebook kind of took us, took the rug up under us and had our whole business model. We had to switch, we had to pivot really fast. And I told that story to our team, and it was an immediate thought process. Like, this is what we have to do. This, if we really want to be able to make revenue for our company, I will go in and create as much content as I possibly can in regards to talking about everything. It's just unload all the information I can. Right. And basically say, hey, we have production still, virtual production is something key. And we looked at it as, if we can combine all of this stuff, it's really creating an awesome ecosystem, because if we're educating students, well, those students are now prepped to understand this industry, and we're doing it where we're creating this technological platform to make it easy for them to digest. And the fact that when they're looking at being able to engage with the industry, they want to be able to do events. They want to be graphic designers. They want to be coaches, refs. And when you're building a company, especially from organic, you can't go to Monster and see somebody that has 10 years of experience in esports. You really have to cultivate that talent. Right. And so from that perspective, being able to utilize this technological platform, it now opens the eyes of individuals who are students, high schools, middle schools, or even in college, and then allows them to say, well, I can do that too. So ultimately, that's a feeder system to say, hey, let's now allow those same students to come in and put together events so they can have a portfolio that they can send to larger entities out there that are looking for the same type of talent. Because you can't just go right now you have Hitmarker, but you can't just experience the top end in esports. And if you could, everybody has been flatlined to where they can't even spend the amount of resources for that top talent as they would. So everybody has to come down. And I think when being in that position and talking to the team, if you have true team structure and your team believes in you, then it's almost like, it's intense. You tell them, hey, we're going to be in the trenches for at least about 2 months. But here's the plan on how to see it through. And I'm going to be here with you guys every single day. If not, you're going to see me here early in the morning, or I'm going to be setting meetings with you guys at 7 a.m. and all the way up to 1 o'clock in the morning. But we're going to get through this together. And this experience has really built our team together, like so tight knit now. And it allowed me to identify who was really in it for themselves as well. Individuals that you bring in and they're really in for themselves, you see them kind of start to move, and it's like, okay, cool, I understand that. And then you see the individuals who are really a part and really want to see this industry grow, then it allows you to be able to say, all right, cool, I'm finna stick it through, and this pivot is a benefit. And I want to look at it as a way to teach the world how to, engage with times like this, because ultimately where I come from, you have to pivot all the time because the resources are just not there. So you're trying to figure out how to make it all the time. So I just had to make sure that we were all, it leveled us. It really humbled us. And these times like now we're experiencing where we're like, those schools are coming back to us saying, hey, you guys have pivoted and created this awesome platform, and it's mobile, and our students are loving it. And it's like now our staff members, our team members are like, wow, like we just did that. And so now there's an elevated goal to say, let's keep doing it. And then it takes it back to our roots for esports, because now we're educating, and now we can showcase and show how it looks from a virtual perspective. And if we have a student that comes in and is able to put together an event like with, we've done an event with Columbia. We're going to do an event for EA Madden, and we're doing these large events. We've done a community events for our city. So when we're doing these virtual experiences, our staff have to put those virtual experiences together. So now they're able to still build their portfolio. And for the individuals who are interested in educating our community, now they have the opportunity to create content and do graphic design and so many other elements to say, hey, this is what I really want to do, and this is how I want to offer my advice, my skills, my talent to the world. And now with the virtual experience and a software technology platform, they can go global. And at that point, now that it can impact even more individuals. And so we share an all vision together, which keeps us going during these times.
So I have a friend who, a group of friends who recently opened a board game cafe. I'm sure Trey probably knows them. They're your neighbors right across the street.
Okay.
Our friends over at Friend Info. And it's been a very interesting process being friends with them and also following like their Facebook pages. And the struggles that they tend to convey is trying to figure out the balancing act, right? How do we follow, the guidelines and best practices and regulations set by the government in regards to how we can safely open, when to safely open, and how do we do that without, for lack of a better phrase, betraying the community that we've built up, right? What's the balancing act there between when we feel like, okay, based on these parameters that we're adapting, it's safe? How as, I guess, business owners, do you kind of weigh that? Because I feel like, and maybe Trey and Jonathan, y'all can springboard off of this, but you all seem to be in a almost impossible situation with that in mind, where the government maybe says, if as long as you do X, Y, and Z, you have a safe event, and the community, on the other hand, that you've built such a strong relationship with, maybe feels otherwise. Can you elaborate on that a bit?
Yeah, I mean, from FX, the game store's point of view, it's not all that hard. I mean, limit how many people walk in the store and shop, wear a mask, constantly cleaning, your counters, your racks, whatever, registers, keypads, things like that. But I've been racking my brain since this has been 6 months now. It's like March 12th that Rudy Gobert. I remember that because I was sitting in a bar, boom, and the NBA canceled everything. But from that point, I've been trying to struggle with that. I don't know. I mean, especially when we have, the number of people that we have on Wednesday nights for Ultimate. I don't know how, if I had 100 people in there, how I would keep everything clean and keep social distancing. And I mean, we're already there until 2:00 in the morning, and I wouldn't see it ending till 6 a.m., 9 a.m. the next day. I mean, there's other things I've thought of. Maybe if we get so tired of the net play with Ultimate and we feel like it's safe enough to have a week-long tournament where it's 6 people, 8 people there, 10 people there at a time, and you just are running pools throughout a day, and everybody's not. I mean, that's a massive undertaking. Who knows how many people would sign up for something like that? It's
a bubble tournament.
yeah, right. I mean, it's I don't know. There's been following. If you follow DFW Ultimate on Facebook, there's been a couple of companies who have tried running some locals. And they didn't get a lot of people, and they're, say they're cleaning and following all the guidelines and stuff like that, but they've gotten attacked pretty hardcore on there. And we just had to, as monitors, or admins, we just had to make a rule that says, you can't advertise your local tournament right now, because it's just not that it's not safe for the community to go, but I think more importantly, it was turning into just lots of bad posts. I mean, or threads in the post, comments.
Yeah.
I don't have an answer for you. It's just ongoing, because I really don't know what to believe either. I mean, I'll hear people say it's like the flu, and what are we worried about? We're taking risks every single day by just driving or shaking somebody's hand or doing anything. And then I hear, all these numbers and people dying right and left, which is just, it breaks your heart. But I mean, it's not like it's Walter, well, y'all might even know who this guy is, but because I'm so old. But like watching the news back when I was a kid, it felt like you were getting straight information. Now, I don't know. I don't know. You can't tell.
I feel like it's
too many people with too many voices.
Yeah, it's hard, and that's kind of the impossible situation that a lot of y'all have been put in, is trying to figure this out, not only with yourselves but also with your communities. And I'm definitely excited for whenever things are safe again, to come back to things. Last question before we close. Do you feel like when things are safe again, that events will return back to where they were as if nothing happened? Or do you think that this has changed the event space forever?
No, I don't think so. I think that it's going to be bigger and better. And I can't wait. We were so primed this year to have such an amazing time. And it's amazing to me seeing the community through Facebook and just talking to some of them and seeing these two guys here who are just leaders in the community, and their spaces are so amazing that I can't see if we put us three or anybody who has a passion for this, once we're able to put people in the seats and play the games that they love and we love, I think it's going to blow away everything that we've seen. 100%.
I think the world is ready to get out and to socialize, to enjoy themselves. And so, I don't see us having much trouble. I mean, we're going to have some obstacles. Look, for a long time,
right,
we're going to have to sanitize things. There's going to be some protocols and things that are going to stay in place. For some communities, that's a good thing. And, we can create a safe, clean environment for everybody. Ensure that, it's a healthy place to be, a healthy activity to participate in.
Can you keep stuff clean with that FGC group? I don't know. It'd be tough. No.
It's tough. Let me ask that question right back at you.
It's true. I was about to say, Trey,
Yeah.
something about glass houses. I love my Smash community, but
that's awesome.
Yeah.
To add on that before we head out, you got to think about it. Like we identified how valuable spaces were going to be before really spaces was a really thing. And it was more individuals that were playing online and they yearned for that experience. When I take it back to the NBA 2K element, most individuals played online anyway. That the community wasn't like FGC, where everybody traveled to different. When I experienced FGC when I was first learning, I was just like, man, this is awesome. So for most communities, online was the thing. And they were yearning to come to those facilities. And it was like a reunion because you've been playing with someone for so long and you wanted to see them in a personal and just have fun with them. It was competition, but it was also just a camaraderie just as much. And so now with us being, everybody being forced to go back virtual, that same type of thought process is going to come back where it's like, we've been virtual. I really want to talk and, be engaged with somebody. So, this is the moment where we have to bunker down, find other opportunities in these moments, but ultimately start to prepare. It's almost like if you're not like getting your nuts and storing them like a squirrel, like you're not doing it right now, because it's ultimately going to come back. And it's going to be 10 times better because people really, as Panda said, people really are wanting to go out and experience. And it's no different from the gaming community as well.
I am greatly looking forward to whenever, a vaccine comes and whenever it's safe for all of us to be able to put on all of our respective events. And just as much, I'm looking forward to when it's safe for all four of us to grab a beer and just chat for a while, because this has been a great conversation. We've actually ran several minutes over, but I just felt like we couldn't end it without talking a bit about the future. So again, thank you everybody for tuning in. Let's give it up for our first panelist of the day, doing a great job and bringing us through. Just bear with us. When we come back, it's going to be the start of the next panel, which is all about the path to pro. Thanks, everybody. Take care, and I'll see you in 2 minutes.
See you guys.
Bye-bye.
All right. Thank you.